So you want me to introduce?
Whoa!
Hey!
Did you see that?
No.
Oh man, we're back. Hello.
Hey. So welcome back to number 5. So you survived the last 4. Now you're onto the 5th. So we're here to talk about our connection to parentage, adoptive parents, and birth families. Let's jump into it. We're both familiar with our birth families, but we have different stories to tell and or how we found our connections, basically. My connection with my birth family has been a very recent connection, like really recent connection, to be honest. I think it's a hard one for us to think about, I think, in terms of how we see our birth parents and how we see our adoptive parents, because obviously we spent more time with our adoptive parents and we were brought up with our adoptive parents. So I think we have a firmer understanding of them and how they've adopted us and how the way that our family has been created.
Yeah.
But with our adoptive parents, we had to kind of be introduced to our adoptive parents as adults.
Our birth parents, you mean?
And our parents, yes, our parents, without really knowing anything about them, and yet we're their children. So it's kind of a bizarre sort of kind of connection I found, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because obviously we're related to them because we're
By
biologically
blood.
related to them, but we don't know who they are.
Right.
It's
Do you think that your thoughts about your birth parents have changed over the years at all? Your thoughts, your perception, or just your general understanding of maybe who they were in relation to you, or maybe who you were in relation to them?
Definitely. I think you kind of wake up one day and think, oh my God, I've got parents. I have parents in Peru, but I don't necessarily term the word parents. I just saw my mum. I sort of had like, okay, I've got my mum in Peru, but for a very long time, I thought the link between her and me was pretty much like never to be recovered, sort of like sealed and sort of never going to be found, or it's not possible, or kind of negative connotations towards actually having a relationship, sort of it's not going to happen. And so you grow up thinking, well, it's so far away, England vis-a-vis Peru. And then the information I got was like all I had was 2 sheets, and I think it seemed even more impossible, sorry.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I grew up thinking, I love my mum so much, but I realized it's just not going to happen, sort of thing. I'm not going to be able to talk with her. I'm not going to be able to just hold her hand. I never really had an image of my dad, but I think as you grow up, when you go back to your birth country, and as I into, I kind of like was more involved in adoption and proven adoptees, I suddenly realized there was a glimmer of light, and all of my thoughts and all my prior understandings or like perceptions of the fact that I might not see my mum might have all just been not true.
Yeah.
I think my connection with my mum then became more real. Like, there was hope.
When you went to the country?
Yeah, when I went to my country, and then when I realised I could find her, then it certainly became really real. But I, like, vis-a-vis my dad, I never really thought much about him. I always thought that he wasn't going to be around. Like, his story wouldn't have really changed anything or something. It wouldn't have factored in, sort of thing.
Right.
Not as much as my mum. So my vis-a-vis relationship between my birth mum was sort of strong connection inside. I loved her even though I didn't know who she was or who she looked like or what she was called. But I certainly felt something when I went to do my search and when I spoke with other adoptees. I think prior to my search, speaking to other adoptees, or even being questioned, why you're not searching, why you're searching, whatever frame. I always thought, see, that question brings lots of emotions and stuff.
I think it's interesting that you didn't really think about your birth father that much, because you grew up with an adoptive father, right? You have an adoptive mother and adoptive father.
I mean, I did grow up with my adoptive dad, but I don't know, I don't know why I didn't really think about him much.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I always kind of attributed the fact that I didn't really think about my birth father that much just because of the fact that I didn't grow up with an adoptive father. it was just me and my mom, me and my single mom. I didn't even have any other siblings either. And I thought about my siblings. I think, and that was partially because I knew I had an older one. And then later I found out I had a younger one. And it probably was because, too, I think I got a lot of information about my birth mother. And I really didn't have any information except for negative things about my birth father. And so I think I kind of felt the same way as you. I just didn't even have a thought about like knowing him or like really meeting him or like seeing him. And I didn't even think about the fact that I could have even more siblings on his side apart from me, because my siblings and I, we have different birth fathers and the same birth mother. And I didn't really realize until maybe like a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago or something, it like finally occurred to me like, oh hey, like I could have a whole nother family on his side.
Yeah.
And it was just really bizarre to me. I don't think I always held negative emotions towards him, but I think at some points in my life I kind of would think about him and be like, oh yeah, like he was a bad person. I would maybe wonder like why is he not in the picture, when I was born? Why wasn't he around? Besides the fact that just like, he was an alcoholic or, just a bad person or whatever. Like I was curious about that. For my birth mother, I mean, I thought about her all the time just because of the fact that my mom told me I was adopted via this bedtime story in which my birth mother was like one of the main personalities. And so I thought about her a lot, and I think I had positive feelings for her, and I just always remember thinking that she was a good person because she placed me and she wanted better things for me and she wanted more for me than she was able to have in her own life. I think I felt some love towards her when I was younger. And then after I did my birth country search, kind of like you said, it was like that much closer. The first time I went when I met her, I was really scared to meet her. I didn't want to meet her anymore. I had wanted to meet her for so long, and then I didn't want to meet her when the time came. And I tried to like hide out in my room, but my mom told me I really needed to go see her. So she came, and then we met, and it was fine. I felt much better, and we spent a couple days together actually, my family and her. But after that, I remember feeling like I'm tired of her being around. So, I mean, I was 12 years old, and like I felt like I didn't know her. I didn't have as strong as a connection as I thought I was gonna have with her. I think I realized at that moment I had an expectation that we would be closer, but we had a language barrier, and I was young, and I was like kind of ready for her to go, and I was ready to just move on by the second day that we were with her. That was interesting for me. I think maybe a little bit confusing for me too, kind of trying to figure out like, well, that's like supposed to be my birth mother. Like maybe I should have a stronger connection with her, but I don't.
I think adoptees spend a lot of time searching for their birth parents. I think sometimes connections are not made, which brings us to the question, is it really important? I mean, it is important to know. I think it is important to know.
Yeah.
I think it's important to go through that process
Yeah.
where if you don't make a connection, you don't make a connection. Or if
Right.
you do make a connection, it's not the connection that you thought you would make.
Right.
But I think it's important to make the connection or our connection, even if it's not as good as you think.
I think it kind of just grounds things in a sense because there's so much question and wondering and like why and what and where and who and like what's the real truth or what's the one real story. And so when you go through that process, like you said, of just searching and then actually having a reunion, if it's possible, all of a sudden all these things kind of like maybe not fall into place, but they suddenly become solid and like clear and tangible, and you see something, and you start connecting some dots, and you're like, oh, okay, like I got some of my questions answered. And I think for me too, I realized when I went back, not when I was 12, well, maybe even when I was 12 too, I think I realized I had some expectations that I didn't think I had for my birth family and our relationship and how it'd be, and particularly with my birth mother. You go through the process and you kind of see for yourself, oh, okay, like, got it. Which I think like you said, is important and valid too. I think people want to say like, oh, you have a successful reunion or not. I don't think it's really based on whether you find your birth family and or if you get along. I think it's successful if you decide you want to do it and you do it.
It's hard to measure what a successful reunion is because I don't view mine as not being successful. I don't view mine as being successful. I just
Yeah.
view mine as being the way it's supposed to have been because, I mean, this is a learning process because if you'd asked me this a year ago or whatever, I certainly wouldn't have given this answer that I'm answering you now.
Yeah.
But like, I can't say to myself, well, do you speak to your siblings every week? Do you do this every month? Do you is
Right.
that checklist like? Because if you do this, then that means it's a successful
Right.
reunion.
Oh, you have a good relationship then. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, you're having to one has to deal with lots of things in between in order for it to be whatever you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone has their different stories, and everyone's
Right.
dealing with different families, and everyone's families has different situations.
Right.
So, like, in terms of my birth family, I would say that I ask questions, a lot of questions, and I I wouldn't give up asking the questions, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, put it this way, like, in a perfect world, everything would have been answered on day one, but it's not. So I've just got to obviously know that we don't live in a perfect world, and therefore I don't expect my questions to be answered in the first meeting or on day one. But I keep going at it and going at it. So I don't know. Like, I'm happy with the fact that I'm willing to do that.
I think in
That's
general too, I mean, if you think about relationships as all just in general, any relationship, like it takes time to build trust and to have understanding and to just kind of have a natural interaction,
and I
you
think it's
know?
yeah, and
And with some people, and I think this is, and again, also some relationships too, like you just meet certain people and you just click and you just go and you're comfortable immediately and you have that trust. And then there's others that it takes time to grow them and to build them.
and there's a big gap between like the way your birth family or parents, I would say, see you. I mean, maybe your birth mum saw you when you were like a day old or 2 days old or months, but now you're returning and you're however old you are, and
Yeah.
there's so much there. Like, you don't even know what you're gonna expect. I mean, it's really hard to be able to translate everything that person's feeling, your birth mum, and then the adoptee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think I would assume from a birth parent's perspective, after you place your child for adoption, especially internationally, or just if it's very far and you just had no connection with them, and then all of a sudden they show up, it's like, whoa. I'm sure that brings up a lot of different memories and feelings, and I sure would know how to handle that.
And so, how can you assess if that's a successful adoption? I
Yeah,
mean, you can't. I mean, successful reunion. You can't.
yeah.
You can't grade that. You can't measure that.
I
So,
think, yeah, and I mean, like, I've had other adoptee friends that have had reunions with their families, and, like, they're rejected, honestly, from their families. And I think people too that have met up with birth families that really don't want anything to do with them anymore. And then I've heard other stories where it's like the birth families like just want everything to be just like their family and never got separated. And then there's other people that it's kind of like in the middle of the road, not so extreme on either end. Different
mm,
variations in between. So I mean, like you said, everyone has their own unique kind of experience with it and has to do a lot with what was happening before they were even in existence. I mean, I think when you're young, you just think about yourself, and you think about, you're just selfish in a way. You think just things in context to you. And as I would get older, I would think about different things different ways. Like, I start considering, like, oh, how do adoptive parents feel about these things and seeing things from their perspective. And then thinking more about my birth father. Because when I met my birth mother, the first time, like I said, it was the same information, kind of got negative information about him. And then the second time when I was living there for a year and I had interaction with her for like 6 months of that year, I would see her a lot, and it was really confusing because just the person that she was and just kind of how she is with her health and everything. It ended up being really stressful for me to be around her, and that was something that I was really upset about and really confused about because um, I think I expected a really positive, close, strong connection with her, and some place where we could just like sit down and talk, and it would be simple. And it really ended up not being that way at all. It ended up being much more complicated and convoluted and emotionally heavy and draining than that. And
Mm.
I would Skype with my mom every single time after I would be with her and just like kind of cry to her. And I think by the time I left that year, I was like not having such a great relationship with her. I wouldn't say we left on bad terms, but we definitely didn't leave on like great terms. And my birth mother and I, it took me so long to process everything that I went through that year of living there. So then when I went back again this time, I kind of thought, I do want to have a positive relationship with my birth mother, and I don't want to just write her off based on the fact that she's just not the person I thought she was going to be. I just need to learn to accept and like take her where she's at. And so I had to come to that for myself, and that was a decision that I made. That was what was going to work for me. And so when I went back this time, that's kind of what I did. And not to say that, because I just went back this past February, and I saw her again, and I definitely got a lot more information about my birth father at that time. I've been thinking a lot more about my birth father and his side of the family and just him in general and how he is connected to me. So that's really something I haven't explored too much. But they say he looks a lot like me, so it really intrigues me. I've never met anyone that really looks like me. My birth mother doesn't even really, we don't really resemble each other that much. But my birth father, apparently she says I look just like him, so I'm more interested in seeing him. And I know I just want to see him because I want to see what he looks like. I don't know if I'm necessarily prepared to totally search for him and meet him. And like, that's just not something I think I'm ready for, at this point in time. But maybe later.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to hear.
You never know what you're going to hear. It is so true.
I still don't have all the answers. I mean, not that I have the answers to anything in general. But, like, I know everything. I'm still trying to process my own thoughts about my birth parents. I don't really have them that clear in my mind because, like, it's only recently now that I feel I can actually reflect upon them as a parent, sort of thing. Because I found my mother, sorry, a year and a half ago. Well, she's dead, which isn't the greatest thing for an adoptee to find.
Yeah, not so much.
Because I think there's certain processes that one goes through. I think you first have to find that person, and then you've got to know about that person, and you've got to actually kind of like realize that she's dead. Sort of go kind of mourn through the process. I call
Right.
it, and I found it really hard to gather information about her, so I could create a picture of her, of what she was like in my mind. This was a battle that I had to go through because my mum had various problems. She didn't have a life that people would sort of, you wouldn't really talk about, kind of thing, and nobody was willing to talk about it in any
Yeah.
shape, way, or form. It's like the past of the past, kind of thing. But I really wanted to go to the places where I would really get to know my mum, and not and I so I could understand her, and I could appreciate her, and I could understand the context of how she lived her life.
Yeah.
Because I have to have that because I can't meet her, and so my connection with my birth mum is through other people, really, because that's the only way I can do it. And so I spent a long time kind of just finding out who she is and collecting information from all different areas. When I found out she was dead, I kind of went into like emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Because I'd never seen a picture of her. So the first time I saw a picture of her, I was like hyperventilating
Oh
kind of
my
thing.
God.
Oh my god, that's a picture of my mom. Like really, like couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like I saw a picture of my mom and I found out her name. I think it was so much to take in. And on top of that, um, yeah, on top of many other things, like there's many other things. And I think I kind of like that night I just couldn't sleep. I kind of
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, and I think I was sort of like, oh my gosh, I was so close in the
Mm.
sense I was so close to find her when she was alive, meaning I walked past her door when I'd
Wow.
been to Peru. I mean, I was so near to her. Literally, I was so near to her in space.
Wow.
But yet so far because I didn't know who she was. And I think that whole sense of being there while she was there and feeling her presence there was all for something.
Yeah.
So I think all of those emotions were pretty high, like high alert, and but then you go through the motions of actually went to her grave, like
Mm.
go to see where she's buried, and all of that realization she's gone. But you just in a space of 24 hours, literally realize she was alive. Going from the fact that she's finding out her name, then finding out the fact that she's alive, and then finding out where she lived, and finding out the fact that she's dead, all through a space of 24 hours, and then going to her grave.
That's pretty crazy.
Pretty intense,
That's an
like
emotional
going
ride for
from
sure.
optimism to hope to actually no, there's no hope. But I don't really recall many things. I think I was in a state of like here to there, from there, but then
Yeah.
spent the whole night crying. So I kind of ended the night crying. But it was all good. It was something that I had to go through, and I'd rather have done that than not go through any of these
Mm.
emotions. I think it's all healthy.
Yeah.
I look back now, a year and a half, and I think, well, you know what? Like, because I had a bit of like when I realised she's dead, I carry her picture around with me,
Mm.
in my journal, and like I put it under my pillow and feel close to her and like say prayers,
Oh,
like feel like really like this. And then about after like 6 months, I'm like ready to like let go.
let it go. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I still have a boat, and I still like think of her and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But it's less intense. And anyway, so then as the time went by, my dad was on the picture anyhow, all through this time, like kind of here, there, and everywhere. And it's not easy always. That's why I say everyone's issues are different. And anyway, but when I did meet with him, like, not so long ago, really, when meeting with my birth father, I already knew that he didn't know about me. So I wasn't expecting anything amazing in a sense
Right.
of him providing me with certain particulars.
Yeah.
But in terms of connection, now I don't. I kind of felt. Well, obviously, I felt really nervous about meeting him. I felt really anxious, and
Yeah.
I didn't know what. I just didn't know who he was, and because I hadn't gone through that through my birth mum, like I already had as a picture, and I had certain emotions already there. I had to express them already there. With my birth father, I had known about him for a year and a half, and so I'd processed that in my mind, sort
Mm.
of. But now was the time to meet him, and so I kind of felt nervous, and I kind of thought, well, I didn't know how to feel. How would he want me to respond? But in the end, well, I just listened to him and what he had to say to me, and he listened to me what I had to say to him, and that was our meeting really. There are many things discussed, there are many emotions expressed, but
Mm.
in terms of connection, there are many reasons why I don't feel like my connection with my birth mom is different to my connection with my birth dad.
Mm.
I don't think I could ever, like, in terms of my adopted parents, like, bring my adopted parents in now. Um, when I, having gone through all of this journey and how I see my parents in general, like parentage, I think I've realized a lot of things in this journey. I think I needed to find out. But also, I was very aware that I was very secure with my parents
Yeah.
in London, that I had a good relationship with them, in that it wasn't going to destroy anything, in a sense, that it wasn't going to damage our relationship.
Yeah.
So, this is a good thing to know.
Yeah.
My expectations of my birth family wasn't really, well, I really didn't know what to expect, but I knew, but I didn't know. But as time went on, I realized my birth father, for example, it's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
So there has to be certain things in place and understandings
Yeah.
before. And so all these things we're working towards. But I don't know if I'll ever get to that relationship that I have with my adoptive family. They're both my parents, but obviously my adoptive parents, because it's so new, everything's so new, they know me better, and I can't really, and my birth mum has died, so that's just out the window, and
Yeah.
that's not going to be the same. They're kind of the people who are going to know me better,
Yeah.
because my birth mum doesn't have the opportunity to know me better.
Right. I think I feel the same way. For me, I feel more like my birth mother is like, she would be considered a parent. My birth father, not so much. And I think especially in light of information that I got recently about him and just the circumstances of my birth and his involvement.
Well, this is a thing, isn't it? Because this is the way I feel about my birth father. I mean, I don't know I don't know how to process it all and how to think about it all. And
I think more than ever in this stage in my life, I have respect for my birth mother. I have mad respect for her.
I respect my birth mother.
And I think not because she's like this angelic creature or anything, because she is, I'll say she's a hard person to be around with. My younger birth brother and her gone through a lot of things together since he was not placed for adoption. He grew up in the country. But I think I saw some things in her this time. I think coming in, understanding better who she was, where she's at in her life, and just the things she's been through from the second time that I met her, which is when I was living in the country. Like I had mentioned earlier, I got really overwhelmed with her, but this time when I saw her, again, it was overwhelming and it was emotional, and I cried. I mean, I kind of cried off and on when we first talked, our first meeting together, and I just felt a sadness for all the things that have happened to her, and it's just hard. Like life's hard, because of that, and because I think I'm a little bit older, and I could kind of interpret some of her actions a little bit differently instead of taking it and being annoyed with it or taking it in a bad way. I kind of interpret it as like she's still really trying to be a mother, to me and to my younger brother. And I could really understand that there was a lot of love there. And I think that's like the first time I've really seen that and the first time I've understood it. Like she has a lot of love. She may not exactly know how to express it. She may not be someone that was meant to be a parent or the best parent, but I have respect for her because she really tried, she really tried, and I know she comes from a place of love, even though her actions may not manifest themselves to look typically as actions of love. I see that she does have love for me, for my younger brother, for my older brother, and she did what she had to do. She did what she could with her not even having parents herself, and not knowing, not having guidance, you know. So I have a lot of respect for her now, just as a human and as my birth mother, and it definitely makes me appreciate my adopted mom more. We've always been close, and I think we went through things like when I was a teenager, typical stuff where you just kind of like butt heads for independence, and definitely there was a time I didn't want to be around her, 17, 16, 17, 18, 19. But I think going away to Peru and like spending so much time there in a way almost brought me closer to her, and it just made me really appreciate having someone in my life that cares for me and loves me and raises me. And not like I didn't know that before, but it just gives you a new perspective on things, at least for
Mm,
me it did. And I'm thankful that like your parents, she recognized the fact that I have birth family, I have birth parents, and like that's never going to go away. And her mere existence and just the fact that she adopted me doesn't make that go away, and that's important for me to explore. And I feel like she gave me a good platform and good support to be able to do that, where I didn't feel like I was making her feel bad or telling her she didn't matter just because I was looking to have a connection with my birth mother or birth family. So I appreciated
mm,
that too. I also did a search for my original birth certificate. My current birth certificate, my legal birth certificate, I guess, is from Peru. It has my legal name because I have two names: my birth name and then my legal name, which my adopted mom gave to me. It has my adopted mother's name and profession, has the date I was born, and that's it. It really doesn't say anything else. And it just seems so bizarre to me, like, what child is born without two parents? It just kind of feels like, poof, here I am, there it goes. And like all of a sudden I was born in Peru, but yet I have this white mother and it's just one mom and like that's it. To me, document is like, it's so significant. Like everybody has a birth certificate and everyone has two parents on their birth certificates, most people. And so when I went to get my original one, it had my name, my birth mother's name, her profession. Then I had on the side like all the typical information, the time I was born, where I was born, the date I was born, more information than my legal one has, and on the side it has a little thing that says an act of adoption, and it actually specifically dates out and maps out, you know, my birth mother went to the court, this lawyer was present, this judge was present, and said that this adoption will take place. This child's going to now be called Analisa. This woman, this Senora Lori is going to be her mother from now on out. This is what her name will be called. It was just so much more complete. And it was just something that it just gave me so much more context of like how I came to be, and like just another piece of my story, Not that I just appeared out of thin air and this is my family now, which is all good and well. I accept this as my life and my family, but for me, that's why it was important, because it's just another piece of my past, something that I can link myself to, I think just genetically, biologically. I can link myself to my adoptive family very easily. I mean, it's my family, I have nothing else to say about that. It's my family. But their history, I mean, my birth mother's cultural history is English and Portuguese. That's obviously not my history, it's just not. So for me, that's kind of what it's been about.
It was interesting when you're talking about your birth certificate, how everything seems to make sense because you have everything there. Well, you had so much information, at least on your birth certificate, which makes me think lots of things. Because I don't have that
Yeah.
information on my birth certificate. I don't have confirmation to date, or the fact that she knew I was adopted. I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
I've not seen a single piece of paper to say that she knew I was adopted.
Hmm.
You don't really realise this until speaking with other adoptees. I don't know that she knew I was adopted. The more I hear of things and the more I hear of people, she didn't know I was adopted, which then
That's a
kind
big piece of information to not have.
of, yeah, like I don't have that piece of paper.
Yeah.
She died and my dad's no use, so
Yeah.
I think our Laura's have something inside of me it's the way it's just left open kind of thing. It's not really resolved.
Yeah.
But I've done as much as I can. We spend lots of time and energy in our lives thinking about our parentage, and it comes to a point where one can't do anything anymore if one has, like my case. And then I'm always interested to know how what's going to be next. This is what I'm trying to say, like what's going to be the next thing. It's kind of like I see my mum as a person with a great respect with her, but I will never know if she knew that I was adopted.
Yeah.
And I will never know the exact circumstances of my
From
adoption.
her. Yeah.
Well, yeah, from her. Well, she was the only one that knew because no one else knew about me.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about it at the moment because
Yeah.
I'm just beginning to realise these things.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Like, ask me in another year's time how I feel about this. Because at
It
the
takes a
moment I'm
lot of
just like,
time to just process a
yeah,
lot of these
that's true.
things.
I'm just acknowledging, like, yeah, that's true. She didn't know. Yes, that's true. How can it be that my dad this X, Y, and Z? It's like, yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, first you kind of get the piece of information and then you take a while to just kind of digest it and figure out like, okay, how is this significant now,
And it's not like she gave other kids to adoptions.
Right.
I mean, she kept them all, sort of, in a very roundabout way. It still means questions parentage for me. It still means questions. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It still means
Yeah.
questions. Like, I mean, there's still questions, but I can't answer them. So yeah, but that's okay for the moment.
That's the reality, I guess, at this point.
Definitely.
I think even though I know so much more than I did before, there's still questions, there's still uncertainties, especially with, my birth father's piece missing, and I think maybe it's just our personalities too.
Yes,
That we
our
just kind of don't want to
personality
stop
not make.
digging. We don't want
We
to stop
don't stop
digging.
thinking. This is the problem. If we were a person that doesn't really reflect on a
Yeah.
weekly basis about who we are, where we're going, or where we're from,
Yeah.
then this would not be an issue.
Yeah.
We've got personalities that we are not really happy with our first answers, and we like to go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's
And
good.
yeah, and I think it's important to kind of recognize that, like, this is our process,
Mhm.
and it's okay, and we're going through it, and I think
At
the
least
best,
we go through it
yeah,
together.
I was gonna say, I think the best part of it is that we have each other to go through it with, because I don't think anyone else could really be helpful, honestly, in being able to talk about this process besides another adoptee, and then particularly the fact that you're also from Peru makes it even more relevant, or just more.
Well, it's not only Peru. So many. Well, of course it's Peru, don't get me wrong, but there's so many other things like Peru, but we're from the same kind of part of
Area.
the area. I
Yeah,
mean,
similar story in a
like
way.
similar stories and stuff, and our
Yeah.
mums have similar dispositions,
Right.
so we kind of understand
Just the
the
culture of it.
situation.
Yeah.
But onward we go.
Onward we go. Well, next week we'll be talking more about our connection to our families in general. We're going to be touching on the topic of siblings, birth siblings, and our adoptive siblings. Should be another interesting conversation. I feel like this conversation maybe has left a lot of doors open. I'm kind of feeling that for myself right now. It's just real, and I appreciate that experience. Until next week.
Bye.
Bye. Do you hear
What?
that?
I
Oh
know.
my god. Why do you have to mow the lawn right now? Hold
I
on.
was